Hello, algebra students. Today, now that we've finished up our normal graphing, we're going to move on with some other kinds of graphing that we can do. And we've graphed with the table of values in the past. This is a really nice, easy way for us to be able to get some points if we're not really sure what a graph is going to look like. So for instance, this is just linear. This is in slope-intercept form. I know that you could just graph it in slope-intercept form, but let's just warm up a little bit and remember how we would do this with a table of values. So I'm giving you different numbers to put in for the x right here. So when I have -2 in my equation, -2 times the -2 that I'm substituting, and then I'm going to add 1. So -2 times -2 is +4, plus 1 is going to be 5. When I put in a -1, by the way, you don't necessarily have to show all this work. You can be doing this in your head. -2 times -1, that's +2, plus 1 would be 3. When I put in a 0, well, anything times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. -2 times 1 is going to be a -2. -2 plus 1 would be a -1. You can definitely see a pattern here. And then -2 times 2 would be a -4. -4 plus 1 would be a -3. So when I graph that, -2, +5, -1, 3, 0, 1, 1, -1, and 2, -3. So this is our straight line. It's linear. It has a slope of -2, which you could see already. It has a y-intercept of 1. You already knew that as well. But again, the linear problems on your worksheet are just to practice that substitution. Now, for number 3, this is a different kind of a graph than all the other ones on the worksheet because I needed to have some kind of bigger numbers to be able to graph here. This is not going to be linear. I cannot put this into slope-intercept form. All I'm asking you to do is just square the x. So for each one of these, when I have the -3, -3, and I'm putting it in parentheses, squared, that just means -3 times -3 is 9. I don't think that we have to write this down for all of them. -2 squared, or -2 times -2 is 4. -1 squared is +1. 0 squared is 0. 1 squared is 1. 2 squared is 4. And 3 squared is 9. So you can see, again, there is definitely a pattern that you can see. There's some symmetry here. -3, 9 is way up here. -2, 4. And -1, 1. So these are all decreasing, not quite linear, but then we go to 0, 0, and then it turns around and it starts increasing again. So 1, 1, 2, 4, and 3, 9. This is a quadratic. That's what it's called when there's an x squared. This is called a parabola. We will be doing a lot more graphing with parabolas later this year, but that's just what that's going to look like. Again, table of values, we can definitely get some points, so we can get a pretty decent graph. Now, I'm not saying that my graph is perfect here, but the sides are curved a bit. They're not straight lines. All right, number 4 from the worksheet also, I thought maybe we should just do this one right away. When I have something cubed, this is called a cubic function or a cubic graph. When I have -2 cubed. That's -2 times -2 times -2. That means there's 3 negatives, which will give me a negative, and 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. -1 to the 3rd power, or -1 cubed, -1 times -1 times -1. I know it's going to be a 1, but there's 3 negatives, so it's going to be negative. 0 times 0 times 0 is 0. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1, and 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So when I graph this, again, you can see some of the numbers match, but the signs don't this time. So -2, -8 is way down here. -1, -1, 0, 0, 1, 1, and then 2, 8 is here. A cubic, it's kind of an S shape, I guess. And let's see how I can do here. So this curves and it keeps going up, and this curves and it keeps going down. Again, not something that you would be expected right now to be able to graph on your own because you've never done that before, but we can find these values with the table. The majority of this worksheet, and what we're going to be doing in the next lesson as well, is working with absolute value. You know that absolute value is the distance away from zero. So I can find the absolute value of these different numbers. So for instance, the absolute value of -2. How far is -2 from 0? That's 2 units away. How far is -1 from 0? 1. 0 is 0 units away, 1 is 1 unit away, and 2 is 2 units away. So when I graph this, I get a V shape. This time it's not curved. It's not one straight line either. We've got 2 straight pieces though. It does make a V as opposed to like a U. In number 6, having this negative in front is like saying -1 times that absolute value. This is saying you know that absolute value is going to be positive, but I'm going to multiply it by a -1. I'm going to make my answers negative on all of these. So the absolute value of -2, let me write this out here. This part is going to be 2, but the negative stays out in front. So that's going to be a -2. So the absolute value of -1 is 1, but then we keep that negative out in front. That's a -1. Well, the absolute value of 0 is 0. -1 times 0 is still just a 0. The absolute value of 1 is 1, but the -1 out in front is going to make that into a negative. And the absolute value of 2 is 2, but the negative out in front makes it a negative. So this time, I kept these two on one slide on purpose so you can see the difference between the two graphs. The negative out in front of the absolute value takes that first one that I did for number 5 and just flips it upside down. If there's a negative in front of the absolute value, that V is going to be an upside down V. Number 8, I have to substitute some of these numbers in, so I think that we will do a little bit of substitution here and show the substitution. The absolute value of your X value minus 3. So here I've got 1 minus 3. Well, the absolute, let me back up. 1 minus 3 is -2, but the absolute value of -2 is 2. When I put it in 2 minus 3 inside there would be -1, but the absolute value of that is 1. Now 3 minus 3 is 0, and the absolute value of that is just going to be 0. 4 minus 3 is 1, so I'll have the absolute value of 1, which is 1. And 5 minus 3 would be 2, and the absolute value of that is 2. So when I graph this now, so I've got 1, 2, 2, 1, 3, 0, 4, 1, and 5, 2. So it looks similar to the first absolute value graph that we did, but it's called shifting. It's moving over 3 because of the subtracting 3 part. So that was number 8 from the worksheet. Now we're going to jump to number 9. And in number 9, I've got adding 4 inside the absolute value, and I've got an adding 1 on the outside of the absolute value. You can't just make the absolute value signs go away and just add a 5. That it's going to change things significantly if you do that. So when I put in a -6, -6 plus 4, that would be -2 inside there. And the absolute value is 2. 2 plus 1 would be 3. I'm thinking that we should be able to do this part in our heads, I hope. So inside my absolute value, -5 plus 4 would be a -1. The absolute value of -1 is 1, plus 1 would be 2. When I put it in -4 plus 4 is 0. Well, the absolute value of that is going to be 0. And then we add 1 and we get 1. When I put in a -3, -3 plus 4 would be 1. And the absolute value of that is 1 plus 1 is 2. You can see we're coming back up again. And then -2 plus 4 would be 2 inside the absolute value. That's equal to 2 plus 1 would be 3. So -6, 3. -5, 2, -4, 1, -3, 2, and -2, 3. So again, this got moved around a little bit, but the actual V shape didn't really change. In later math classes, you are going to learn other ways to graph these instead of just filling out a table of values to be able to find that turning point, the vertex. All right, last one that we're going to do is number 12. That negative out in front, again, remember that means it's going to be flipped upside down. So this one's going to get a little bit messy. What I'm going to have here, I'll have a negative absolute value 1 minus 3. Then we're going to subtract 2. So 1 minus 3 is -2. The absolute value of -2 is going to be 2. So this whole thing right here is just 2. But I have that negative that's going to come in front of it. So -2 minus 2 from that is going to give me -4. Again, that's going to get kind of messy if I write that out exactly that way for all of them, but you can feel free to write out as much as you need. When I put a 2 in here, I'll have the negative on the outside. 2 minus 3 is -1. So that's what I have on the inside. The absolute value of -1 is 1, and then this is going to make it a -1. So I've got -1, and -2 is -3. When I put in a 3, 3 minus 3 is 0. The negative out in front is still just 0. So I'm going to have 0 minus 2, which is going to be -2. When I put in a 4, 4 minus 3 is 1. The absolute value is 1, but I'll have the negative out in front. So -1 minus 2 is -3. When I put in the 5, 5 minus 3 is 2. The absolute value of that is going to be 2. So I had the -2, and then -2 is going to be -4. So 1, -4, 2, -3, 3, -2, 4, -3, and 5, -4. Oh, I got a little off track there. So there is a good part of your worksheet done for you. Today, we need you to finish the rest of the problems from this worksheet. And the answer key is in Schoology. So if you need any help, let us know.